All right. I think we're live, yeah?
Oh yeah, the video stops on its own. All right. Brad, good to have you, or thanks for having me, I guess. I guess we're streaming on both platforms.
I think
Is that a
so.
first?
Presumably
Or
it's working. I don't know. I don't know if my LinkedIn one is working or not. I'll check the YouTube. But yeah, ideally, streaming across a few. Yeah, I've never done it quite like this before.
yeah, it's like we're streaming like a World Economic Forum type session or something. Like we need at least 4 streaming platforms to be hooked
I
up
think
to get meaningful audience.
it's at least that important. That's for sure.
Well, it's at least we're going to talk about like the real problems in the world, right? So that's not entirely fair. I think a lot of useful things happen there. Right. So today we'll be talking about AI and sites. And is there anything useful happening in that space? For the people that don't know me on Brad's stream, my name is Derk Arts. I'm the CEO and founder at Castor, and Castor is a clinical trial technology platform, i.e., we make EDC, ECOA, e-consent technology, and now, of course, that includes some AI capabilities because we don't want to be left behind. And I do actually think that there's a lot of useful things you can do with AI. It's just not very easy to do it well. Brad, for the people that don't know you, maybe really quick intro.
Yeah, I mean, I essentially run a bunch of sites, mostly in the Oklahoma City metro area, but we work in an embedded model. We have standalone sites, all kinds of different ways to run a site. I've been doing that on my own for, I don't know, 10 years or so. Worked in academia before that, worked at a hospital system, but my whole career has been basically on the site side.
Nice. And so can you talk a little bit about like what kind of trials you run, what experience you have? I think one important detail is that you don't typically, like, you don't have your own EMR basically that you work out of, but I think you sometimes work out of community sites EMR. Like, can you give us a little bit more flavor for like the type of trials, what type of source you use, just so we set the stage?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty broad. We've worked across just about every therapeutic area that you can name, minus like some pediatrics. We haven't done a lot in that space. I've worked phase 1 through 4, and primarily throughout the years, started out using paper source. We have access to EMR and health records with the clinics that we're partnered with. Or otherwise have to request records from patients we may get off the street or from advertising.
Yeah.
We switched over a couple of years ago to electronic source, dabbled around with it a bit, and actually in the process of reverting back to using paper source. Never used an EMR for source, which I know is a conversation. EHR to EDC is a conversation I keep hearing about, which is not, particularly exciting to me. But
Well,
yeah,
why not?
just because I've never recorded a research visit inside, an EMR.
Right.
I
But
would
what
never.
about like all the labs and medical history and CONMADs and like all that repetitive stuff?
Yeah, and in fairness, we may pull, obviously like historical records to qualify a patient, but after that, we're not putting any research stuff in there. Oncology might be a little bit of an exception. We do, and have done some oncology historically, but aside from that, I really prefer something agnostic because we work with, a bunch of independent doctors, different hospital systems, and they all use different systems.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, specifically, I think you do a lot of interventional trials, right? Like you put phase 2, phase 3. So there's less standard of care there. Of course, when we move into the real world evidence space, there's a lot more of that. But have you ever contributed to like a chart review or something retrospective? Probably not, right? No.
Not so much. Maybe not since like my academic days.
Yeah.
Yeah, not so much. I mean, some of the post market or phase 4 stuff we do is a little more heavy on some of that, but generally, no.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's good. But this is where most of the money is being spent, right? And I think where most of the burden is. So I think that's good to talk about. So AI, quote unquote, has been around for a while, and I think typically you have the persona of being a little bit of a cynic, which I think is useful, and often fair. Have you so far seen anything really useful that you felt like made a difference? I mean, you're moving back from e-source to paper, so I don't think that's a good that's not a great signal. But like, has there been anything on
Well,
AI that has been
I mean,
helpful?
I will say, and even with the move to paper, we've used we use Gleam, who helps transcribe data out of eSource into EDC, like agnostically. It also does have a paper function, so we are using it in that regard. We've used some AI in some of our. We tried some patient like outreach, have AI voice. That went terribly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
tell
it
me
was
about
not. And I don't know how much of this may have been the vendor or what the case may have been. Uh, but we found that you know even in Oklahoma, people would catch on pretty quick that they were talking to AI. We're not fans because I read those transcripts of those calls. As soon as people figured it out, they were like, "Nope, I'm not talking to you." And even then, it would tell them things that simply weren't true. Um, I remember a specific example of a patient asking, like, "Oh, where's the study happening at?" And it was like, "The study's taking place in Michigan." And I'm like, "What the fuck? We're not in Michigan. We're in Oklahoma. So why did it say that?" Um, I think that's a case, and I think I've heard mixed reviews, from people who've tried that the AI voice. It just hasn't worked for us, at least thus far.
Yeah, I know. I think a lot of vendors have rushed into the AI space, not
Well, yeah,
doing like a really good job of the guardrails and everything. I think the direct to, like, I think the direct to patient AI is one of the first things that people tried, but I think it should be one of the last because it's
I
actually really
I agree.
really hard to like. Basically, I would say almost 4 years ago, we basically had two main products that we were considering pushing out. One was a direct to patient product. And we wrote a couple grants to fund that properly and develop that properly. Or the other one was kind of a side-facing technology, you're basically removing the need for manual data re-entry. So that's what we're talking about today with Castor Catalyst, which has similarities with Clean, by the way. But we chose Catalyst because I was like, man, we have the IRBs to deal with, and it's kind of hard to explain how an AI will respond live. I think it's manageable. I think right now we could do it, but still, like, it's tough. And then there's just the incredible risk and like the burden of supervising all those transcripts, which you could also automate. But then you have an AI babysitting an AI, and
Right,
yeah,
right.
it's not easy. So we said, look, let's tackle this first and see how far we can come with like how far the technology will have come in a couple of years, which is right about now. But then you have to think of latency, right? So we have very fast voice models now that can respond really quickly and really naturally, but that then makes it really hard for them to retrieve additional information in real time, right? So because it's like we have a voice model and then we have all the information that is relevant for the trial. So you need to
Right.
find this way of like still having this low latency thing while being able to retrieve information that's accurate. It's still quite difficult, but much more possible. And I think the key thing is, like, it's amazing that you try that. I just say, like, don't ignore that technology for the rest of your life now. Right? Like
Yeah,
a
no,
year
and
from now.
yeah, and again, as much as I come off as cynical, and to be fair, I am fairly cynical, but I also know that this ain't the end, right? Like, just because I
Yeah,
tried it and it didn't work right now doesn't mean it's not going to work 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, whatever the case
yeah,
may be. I mean, there's a lot of room for this stuff to grow. But and again, for as much as I act, like I don't believe in this stuff, I want to try it. I want to try it out and see how it works and how it can. I mean, at the end of the day, I only survive if I get patients into trials. So any tool that helps me do that better, uh, I'm all for it.
yeah, yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit. Like, if you would ask me, like, your biggest frustrations, I'm right now thinking, I think a big one for you is always getting the protocols that are hard to enroll, where you spend a shit ton of time screening and then in the end, no enrollment and no payment.
Sure.
And then of course there's just technology in general, which of course comes back to this paper. And honestly, like, I've been experimenting with Remarkable and stuff, but yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
I still think there is no technology that is equal to paper in the moment when you have someone like around you. Like I say that as an incredible technology optimist. Like I feel like in my head those are two of your big pet peeves. Is there anything new or anything else that is on the list?
No, I mean, I think, number one is for sure just it's not even necessarily like, yes, the tough protocols and getting patients into those protocols. The technology part, frankly, I mean, I've sort of, I don't know, I've just gotten like beaten down over the years, but like, uh, I don't know, I just sort of accept it at this point. Like I'm going to be using all types of different technology. Some is good, some is bad. It is what it is. It's the tools we need to get the job done. And I feel like I try to complain a little bit less about it because I do think everyone's trying. Um, a lot of the stuff too is still it's like soft, it's soft skill, like just communications with sponsors is a nightmare because everything is in emails. You're dealing with, six different people on a team who don't know what they're doing, like amongst themselves. So trying to get a study started up is still a bit of a nightmare with a lot of sponsors.
Yeah. Do you see a role for AI there?
A little bit, I do, and this is something else. Like, I've been trying to move over a lot of what I do into HubSpot, where I can at least, if all the communication is flowing into one place, I can get a nice AI overview of what's going on and maybe help. Instead of trying to read 45 emails, I can at least get one place where everything's going, and I can get a good idea of like what's going on
Yeah.
with like their AI overviews. And again, maybe that's a kind of not the most sophisticated use case, but even that alone can be extremely valuable.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. We have a similar problems actually also, or challenge also with sponsors, I think, or CROs, in the sense that once, like in the beginning, everything is easy, right? Like it's a standard pack of documents. Like, oh, great, here's the final CRFs, and here's a protocol, and we create the specifications, and then it goes like, oh, we also want to be in a Slack channel. Okay, that's great. Like we love direct communication. Okay, well we need to have a bunch of calls. Okay, well here's a bunch of emails, and so we have at least 3 obvious distinct channels where new information arrives. Sometimes with like structural changes, and then all of that needs to be captured and put into a central change log and then signed off on, of course. But it's surprisingly hard. There's a super obvious use case for supervised AI, I would say, and that's what we've been building. Like, that's not what we're going to talk about today, but our internal tooling to just say, okay, every day take a snapshot from all the communication channels. Is there actionable change there, and feed it into an approval log where the PM can say, yes, this is real, this is real, this is real, and then upversion that. So we've kind of been working on this concept of a universal source of truth that everyone in Castor can reach, which is like the latest version of the protocol, the latest version of the CS, of the eco instruments, of everything else.
Right.
Always kept up to date. But yeah, it's a surprisingly tough problem, but I think it is a great one for AI to attack, because it can pretty reliably distinguish between what is like an actual change versus just a random email. So yeah, that's a good one. Anything else? Any new pet peeves that
No, I mean, you've still got sort of your, patient matching AI stuff that's out there, which again, that's something I dabbled with early on. I haven't in a little while for various reasons, not even really technology based reasons.
right?
Um, More so that, again, I feel like identifying a patient in EMR is only like a small piece of the puzzle. A lot of it's the outreach and the cold call, so to speak, of the patient who's like, "Why are you digging through my records? What the hell is going on?"
Right.
There's ways to mitigate that, but I think again, it maybe ends up with like a lot more limited value than people sometimes give it credit for.
Yeah.
Um,
So what is the one thing where AI is really blowing your mind? You're like, oh shit, this is awesome. If any,
um,
or is it
I
still
mean,
zero?
honestly, no. I mean, I'm using it more and more and like leaning into some of the things, but frankly, I feel like the way I use it is pretty like it's like a child would use it. So, I mean, I will run like
I'd like to make like coloring books and shit.
yeah,
Or
make coloring books. That's right. I basically have it like, I started running our own ad campaigns instead of working with central recruitment partners. So,
yeah,
you can load stuff up and say, write me a Facebook campaign with an image. I can do it in whatever seconds. You don't have to hire, a fancy recruitment company, and if you go to these conferences and you see how many booths there are in patient recruitment,
Yeah.
um, you can do that yourself, like, extremely easily,
Yeah.
um, and cost, nothing. You're not having to pay an agency an insane amount of money. I mean, I've used it to break down, different aspects of protocols, look for operational issues that, uh, it may have. So a lot of it's more sort of internal administrative or operational things, I guess, so to speak. But really none of it is particularly sophisticated.
Right. Interesting. Actually, that's a nice a bridge to where I want to go. Like so now you don't need a recruitment firm anymore to reach out to patients, but you still need to know, like, are these patients a good fit, right? So maybe to talk a little bit about Catalyst. I mean, we talked about it a couple of times. It's continued to evolve. Like, do you have a sense for what Castor Catalyst is or does? I mean, you've seen some of it, you've seen a part of it, so I think you have a pretty good feel for it. But like, what is your perception of what that is right now?
I don't know. You tell me. Give me the overview for our listeners.
That's a safe response. All right. So the core principle is, if information or data exists somewhere already, why would you, as a human, have to go through all that? And worst case scenario, why would you have to then manually type that information into something else? So, you talked about paper already. If something exists on paper, obviously you don't want to manually enter it. So that goes for CRFs, that goes for worksheets, that goes for paper PROs that are still actually quite useful for certain patient populations. And that's coming from a company that sells technology to do that job. There is, of course, a lot of information in EMRs that you do need, at least at baseline, right, into a study. And I agree. And interventional studies going forward, there's not a lot of standard of care, but there's still burden up front. And then, of course, there's the screening question, as in, like, great, Brad, you run this campaign, you reach a bunch of patients. How do you minimize the time spent on figuring out if they're actually, like, a
Yeah.
fit?
Yep.
And you could have like 5 different companies for that, but in my head, those are all similar tasks. Essentially, there is information about a patient somewhere in some source that we want to extract in a structured way and then apply some level of intelligence to, either with human supervision or without. And so that's really Castor Catalyst. It's an extension of our platform that is able to, for any study, read data from any source. It can either be a direct-to-patient source, so they can be patients pulling their own records through HL7 Fire in the US or through a HIPAA release, or it can come from sites, which is basically uploads. We deliberately have not tried to make EMR connections, A, because there's a couple of really good companies that do that, but B, because I find that it's actually really hard to do that at scale. Like the sites you work with probably are not going to get hooked up to some kind of centralized EMR pool infrastructure.
Yeah.
And so that's where we allow sites to just upload their information. And so ahead of this, I sent you some sample files as an example of, like, where a site can just upload their own information. But Catalyst is really the workflow to get to the data, which is either direct from the patient or from the site, and then processing that and turning it into data, or turning it into insights, which could mean, what is the likelihood that this patient can be enrolled in this study? Which ultimately is, like, we see a lot of this now, right? Like confirmation of diagnosis. There's actually a shit ton of money that's being spent just to make sure that the patient has diagnosis, which is crazy.
Right.
It's ultimately like 5 data points you need from the EMR, but you do need it from the EMR. So are you going to pay a physician to pull that medical record, wait for a couple of weeks, and then see if that is actually there? Or do you automate that? So that's basically the whole Catalyst play. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think it's a little more than even what I had thought that it does. So
yeah. So I can give you a quick snapshot of, like, what it looks like if you go to patients. Like, for example, this is something we could plug into your recruitment flow. Like, obviously, we typically deal with sponsors, so we would sell it to sponsors, but this is a discussion we've been having for a long time, right? Who owns what? Of course, it's also something that sites could buy, but typically we want the sponsor to pay for something that makes the site's life easier, which would still allow you to run your own recruitment campaign, but then you can.
So, have you considered, I know we talked about this like a long time ago, but in the e-consent days, like selling direct to sites, do you find that viable or do you think it'll be more viable as the future goes?
I think we should just give it to sites. Like, I don't know, like selling to sites is like in the end they're going to try to recuperate it anyway from the sponsor, right? So yeah,
Yeah, but
it's
you know,
not the top list
even
for us.
not like, again, like for me too, like I'm happy to run. I'll spend ad money that I'm not going to get back from the sponsor because I'm going to get an ROI times
Yeah.
10 or whatever. Like
Right.
I don't know. I think that's something sites aren't sometimes should be more willing to spend their money and run a fucking business.
Yeah. Well, again, maybe we should just partner and have you like think about a go-to-market for that.
Yeah.
It looks like every company that sells technology to sites ultimately wants to sell to sponsors. Like
I
that,
mean, I guess that's fair. That's fair enough, but
like that to
nonetheless,
me is a signal for like maybe we just team up with sites and make life better, and then not try to monetize it per se. But we'll see. I think Viva is also trying to do a lot of these things. Like, well, let's just give it to sites and then make more money off the sponsors. Or maybe we actually make trials cheaper. That's great. Like, just make them more efficient and less painful, and
no,
ultimately,
we're not going to do that. You know that.
I mean, it's. I'm hopeful. I just turned 40 actually last weekend, so I feel like I have a lot of time left to make some progress there. So what I'm doing here is I'm going through our patient-facing workflow to get into this demo study. So that I can show you this retrieval pathway. So again, like this, you could plug into your own recruitment flow. Like the sponsor could buy this, you could buy it or use it. But the point being, it's completely direct to patient. And then we've partnered with this company. This is uses the Fireflow. It uses DEFCA. DEFCA is this new standard has been worked on for, I don't know, 15 years or something to allow you to retrieve your record. So it uses either Clear or ID.me. And then you connect
What
your
is it
record.
called?
Defca.
Defca. Okay. I thought that was thought that was a Dutch metal band.
Well, maybe there's that too, but it's also a fancy US infrastructure that makes it much easier for patients to find where they have records. So this then sort of has an index of where all records live for a patient, and you can choose to retrieve them. Sometimes you still have to log into your MyCharts or like whatever, but it's like a 21st Century Cures Act mandatory thing.
Nice.
And therefore everyone has to comply with this technology. So that covers both the HIPAA release, which is sign a document, we fax it, and we get data back, which is probably something you do also often.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is much more direct and much faster, which is nice for this like confirmation of diagnosis or screening workflows, or just trying to increase the a priori chance. So that's basically the process. Like that's what a patient does. It pulls their FHIR data. It doesn't have the entire depth of the medical records you get through HIPAA release, but it gets the job done. And this then gets processed by Catalyst and structured so that you get essentially within an hour you could know all the diagnoses, labs, medical history, etc. from a patient, and then you can review that, or you can build some some calculations to do like the math on is this patient actually likely to enroll.
Nice.
So that's kind of the direct to patient flow, and you can imagine what the HIPAA release would look like. That's just basically an additional consent form with
right. Pretty standard looking form, yeah.
And so then we go to the actual processing step. So what I have here as an example before we do our little interactive session is just an example of a lab form, because I think it explains the concept quite easily. So what we see here is a records where I think like I said, this expiring session. So this is where we just loaded lab data. So this takes about a minute or two to process if you submit a lab form. So this is just a lab PDF, can come from anywhere, from the lab itself. And you can see how it identified all those rows, and it just basically prepares them for review. You don't have to do review, but we typically recommend you do review. And you can override those values if you want. So this is all the value that's going to get pushed into EDC. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 like data points per row, and you just accept them and you kind of move through. And again, it depends on the sponsor in the end if they require this. I think when this technology gets more mature, we won't have to anymore. And then, of course, if you pull Fire data, it has a similar interface, but Fire doesn't have a nice PDF, so it's a lot less fun to demo. But essentially, what you're doing here is once you've received the information, you accept it, and then when you've accepted it, you submit it to our EDC or maybe to some other system. Right now, we just hook it up to our EDC, right? So that's labs. That's one use case. And then what does that basically do? It goes into the study, which I'm going to open now in another tab. And in Castor, what we often see is that use repeating measurements for lab data. And so it basically creates these new forms with one lab row per record. What was the record? What patient was using? 87. And so by our estimates, it saves you about like 80% of the time to get the data from that form into the study. So here we have the data that we just pushed just before we went live. And so these are all the data points basically pushed into the EDC.
Nice.
With human supervision. And so this is like the most basic use case. Like it's sort of semi-structured data. I know a human that is trained can move really fast, but still it's unbeatable in terms of speed. So that's just a nice quick time saver. But again, the most important thing is you can also just do this for a patient who's just been recruited and then figure out like, hey, do they have these labs? Do they have this diagnosis, etc.
Yeah, that part is compelling. The pull from the beginning, which is not something that I've seen.
Yeah, sorry, my daughter came to ask a question. Go ahead, Brad.
No, I don't think I've seen something quite like the ability for the patient to pull in their records like that, like on the front end, which is pretty cool. Because like we're using a service to track down medical records, but it's still I've got to send over a DocuSign, get them to sign a HIPAA. I've got to upload it into their platform. They'll go get, health information exchange records or specific records, and then they can match some against some protocols, but it's a little bit more of a complicated process.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the point, right? We're trying to make it try to like reduce the burden where it actually sits. So one concern we often hear, like if we're going to upload files, is about identifiers. So it also comes with like a built-in redaction engine that just identifies all the PII on the page and just pulls it out. So and it does that basically on a local server in the same region. So even before anything gets processed, it uses a completely like quote unquote offline method of redacting. So it doesn't use AI to redact. It uses a standalone module that doesn't submit any data anywhere, so that you can make sure that, yes, it uploads it to a server, to be fair, because it's hard to do redaction in the browser, but it's a local server and it doesn't submit anything to an AI vendor or anything to do redaction. So we deliberately designed that to make it as compatible as possible with like sites privacy policies.
Interesting.
So that's kind of the two workflows, right? The site uploads with redaction potentially, and then the patient upload. And then you already saw how we process data. So now I sent you a couple files to test this and to showcase some more capabilities, because what I also find quite interesting about Catalyst is the ability to not just enter data. It's not just pure OCR, but actually think a little bit like, what is the protocol, what is the study, and what is the data that I'm trying to enter into EDC, right? Like what you often see, and maybe why eSource sometimes is annoying, is like whatever EDC expects isn't actually what exists in the source. It's
Sure.
Medications have brand names versus their actual the actual compound names, different units, interpretations of free text data. There's a lot of a lot of those things going around. So I think we can do a little demo where you upload something and we see how it comes out. And before that, there's one more thing I wanted to show you, which is on that point. So here we have a pretty basic example, but you can kind of see how it's interpreting the information. This bounding box isn't drawn perfectly, but that kind of shows you that it's real. So it's like symptomatic status. Its interpretation is asymptomatic, right? So it reads the free text, and it is able to interpret that information and say, okay, I understand what we're looking for in EDC, and I understand how to find it in this semi-structured source. For example, patient does not possess a history of renal failure. Okay, renal failure none, right? So this is renal failure none is how to go to EDC, but this is how it's represented in the source.
Right.
I think this is where a lot of the value comes in, because that's where you really start to spend a lot of time reading the actual text, going through it, etc. And we're trying to make it as easy as possible to review this, right? Like, this is not something I would blindly submit to EDC, but obviously now you don't need to hunt around. You just need to verify that it got the context correct, and that it's mapping it correctly. So yeah, that's I think where this whole pipeline kind of comes together, but also why it's a lot of work to build this right and to make it compliant, because it needs to be fully traceable, fully explainable,
Yeah, but again, that's still a huge. I mean, look, dude. I mean, we get huge packets of these medical histories sometimes, so to have to go read through all of that, any leg up like that is a huge advantage for a coordinator who, I mean, they might have gotten 10 patients' medical records that day, and they could all be stacks.
Yeah, exactly.
That big.
Right. And what's a good thing is, like, more and more sponsors we see actually want to pay extra for making it easier for sites. Like, I think you and the whole SOS group, I think, have done a good job of, like, making a point that the sites are doing a lot of the work, and the trial success is ultimately going to be determined by the site actually effectively enrolling in the study. Sure. And so we see more and more sponsors that when we say, look, this is Catalyst, they understand it's mostly site benefit. And they also understand that sites don't want to pay it out of their own pocket. And so we've seen actually significant amounts of money being paid extra just to make life easier. And I think that's a really good signal,
Sure.
All right, you want to try some of the files that you worked on?
Yeah, give it a shot. You want me to share?
I'm going to share your, yeah. So you're going to see this. You're going to see the site interface basically. So we have a couple of models: a model where the site can review themselves, or the model where we review. So we have a nurse basically reviewing and submitting. That's you just drop the files and wait for the data to magically arrive in EDC. So you right now have that access where you can. Interesting. Your screen is not on stage now. Let me just do that. You have that access where you can just upload a file, and then I'll show you how it comes through on my end. So you already did a test Brad 001, so maybe we can use test Brad 002. And so what you're seeing is different time points, right? So often, of course, studies have time points. We also do a couple of studies where we're digitizing paper PROs, which obviously also come with a time point. And so the system actually comes preloaded with the ability to check that it's the right patient ID, but also to check that it's the right time point, if the time point is present on the source. And we even have a study where we're checking if it's the right study I, for example. So there's a lot of these little checks that we can add to make sure that you're uploading the right file, which of course is a big risk.
Sure.
So yeah, just go ahead, try one of the files you have and see. Let's see what happens.
Try the pre-op. Easy enough. Hit upload. Are you sure you want to upload? It tells me the study, the participant ID, and the time point. Easy enough. It's not going to like the ID check though, right?
No, it shouldn't. So it refuses this one because the patient ID in the file doesn't match the patient ID that you selected, which is good. Now we can choose to override, or you could choose that record 001 and show that it does actually recognize that, if you want to try that. Yeah, you can wipe that file, or you can actually just choose another time point. I think you have different time points, right?
Yeah, let me see what I got. I got 01, 3 months. So we'll go three months, 01.
Okay, nice. Two hits. So this file, that means in a lot of studies we do that now, your job is basically done. What I can now do is on my end, I can see that you've uploaded that file, and I can process it. So I will kick that off. And then I think so I will show you what that looks like. I'll walk you through. And then after that, I think we can, you said you had a file you made some changes to, which you didn't announce to me, which is nice. Basically
I wanted to mix it up on it. I wanted to troll you a little bit, see if it works. I did two. I did two different things, so I want to try them out. But yeah,
Yeah, no, I mean, that was the whole point, right? I mean, I know if I bring you on stage, you're gonna try to stress test this a little bit. Do you still have paper PROs at site? Is that a thing you still experience?
yeah. Sometimes we still see some paper PRs. I assume some of that is just whatever copywriting that.
Oh yeah, that's a big
we
thing
see
too,
on
of
some
course.
of those.
One of it, like one aspect is just the population, and then the other aspect is the copyright, which sometimes is insane. All right, let me just quickly share. Let me see. How can I take your screen off stage? Is that a thing? Oh, yeah. Okay, so your file just came through. It was processed. Let me go review. All right, so actually, maybe we should show the file. So it's like a worksheet, right? So this ophthalmology.
I think you still got mine on.
Oh wait, did it the wrong way around.
There you go.
Yeah. All right, so this is what you just uploaded. It's a worksheet with some handwriting. It does handwriting. This is fake handwriting, of course, but just we have to make all these files synthetic. But you know, it looks like handwriting essentially. And you see how it recognizes things, right? Is this one you changed already?
Nope.
All right, this is the one we provided. All right. So if you review this, and we just go into the detail mode, it also explains why I selected something, right? So, okay, it's that eye, great, accepted. And then have there been any IOP lowering meds? Well, it has a whole host here, so there's more than one, great, that's yes. Then looking at the actual medications, okay, that's those two, all right. And then what this study, what this example has is it also maps to the actual medication name, right? So it also takes these inputs, meds. That was basically, you know, by design. So it wouldn't do it by default. It wouldn't like change information out of the box, but it can do it if it wants. So it allows for more flexibility. It also it interprets information. So has any IOP measurement been done, right? Like that question isn't actually literally here, right? It has just this form assumes a measurement is being done, but that's an explicit question. So that's kind of how the system interprets information and then tries to map it, which is nice because you find that a lot of, you know, very often the source doesn't actually match the what the EDC wants, like I said.
Right.
So let me just accept these guys, and then what you do is you submit it, and that's it. All right, so you want to try another one?
Yeah, let me see here.
Let me add you to the stage again.
Is there a way to unprocess that one?
I think I should be able to do that. But do you specifically want to use this number or?
Well, yeah, I think I created one. Actually, I've.
It's fine. You can just override the patient ID anyway.
3 months. I also have a pre-operative. So actually, both of the ones that are there, doesn't give me any option to get rid of it and re-upload.
No, I think once it's processed, I don't have that admin but you can just use a different patient record. That's fine.
Actually, let's see what happens if I do this.
It will complain about the patient identifier, but you can just override that.
Well, and that was part of what I was doing with one of them, was messing with the identifier by error correcting it to see if it would pick up like an error correction.
Right. Oh, interesting. Okay, show me what you did there.
Oops, it's not gonna let me.
You can hover over the little screenshot of the file. Oh, yeah.
Were you able to see
okay.
it? You able to see it there?
Yeah.
So I did a couple of error corrections to see if it would pick up the error correction. You know,
Nice.
if you're writing on paper source, you might be having to error correct. I'm always curious how it handles that because it's showing, you know, your initial and dating, which is adding another.
So upload that one to another time point because the ID verification will still void and it will just fill the time point verification. But let's see if it picks it up. Yeah.
Like this. So I think it was preoperative. Let's see if it takes it. Yeah, we got the ID.
Nice.
You
So I mean, we've also proven that it did reject it on the other one. So that part is actually working. Okay, so then maybe go back to the one you just did and just overwrite. So if you go back to the number 2, and you just override it so that I can process it for you and see if anything else, any of your other. That's all right. Great. Which time point was that? Day 1, right? Oh, here.
It was preoperative.
Oh, you just said cuz again as reason? Okay. All right, it's processing. Awesome. So yeah, I think that's the thing, right? It's very easy to sort of build this quickly, like to sort of prove, oh, AI can find shit in a document, but then actually putting it in a workflow where sites can use it and where it's robust enough to not create a whole downstream mess and make sure we were looking at the right file. Like that's where all the complexity come in, and then it's all the software development lifecycle and the audit trail. So like when I submit a data point, it's still in my name, but it says it's coming from Catalyst, and we also retain all this, the link to the original source, so you can also go back in, and that's kind of the next phase of what we're doing, is where a CRA can then just remotely log in and say, okay, great, I need to do source data verification. I see exactly where it came from in the source. Let's see if it is correct. Okay, let's put my screen on. So this was this one that you modified, or was this one that you? Oh yeah, this is with your where you made the corrections.
Error corrections, yeah.
Yeah. Is that the only thing you changed?
That's one thing I changed on that one, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So well, that's processed. The rest looks fine. Yeah, this date correction is not a field in the study, so that's why it's not picking it up. I didn't know you were going to do that, of course. It needs to be it only looks for things that are fields in the study.
Yeah,
like
yeah. You wouldn't put that into an EDC anyway, so that doesn't make sense.
Right. Okay, so far so good. Was there anything else you changed that you wanted to test, or
there was one other one where and it was a 3-month for visit 1, but I'll pick something else. But you sent me some docs and they were all in the same template. I just changed one into a different.
Did you use AI to do that?
Template? I did.
See, that's fancy. That's very fancy.
Of course I did. And so I was curious. I just wanted to see if it would pick up the fields if they were in a different order, although the data was the same. If there's any change there, it's not going to like the time point.
That's all right.
I'll override it anyway.
I think the fields are the same for the time points for the most part. We'll see. All right, that was 1 month for 001. Oh yeah, sorry. Need to process first. All right, that's processing. So while this is processing for the rest of 2026, is there anything new you still plan on trying? You tried AI voice. I mean, that's pretty advanced. You're trying stuff like this. Anything else on your list that you think can make an impact that you still want to try this year?
Yeah, nothing that's jumped out recently. Again, we're kind of still working with some record retrieval that does a little bit of the checking against protocol inclusion.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, preferable to trying to do it inside EMR is doing it through advertising and outside records. And so that's still a little new, but other than that, I mean, I don't think there's anything nothing else has really jumped out at this point.
Yeah.
Is there
So
anything like you're hearing or seeing like from the site side that
well, I
seems
think this
valuable?
there's like actual like direct voice interaction, and then there's just like what they're doing with EMRs, right? Scribes. Like, is there like we like paper, but obviously talking is even easier. Like, is there a place for like ambient scribes in um, in in a setting where you have the CRC speaking to the patient? I think that's one that's quite interesting that I don't fully know yet how to do. I mean, it would be technically quite feasible. It's more like, how
Sure.
do you prove, like, what is the source now, like the MP4 file, the recording. But I think it has
Yeah.
some legs, but you don't
Yeah,
think so?
that's interesting. I mean, I wonder, I don't know. I have to wonder what kind of other, if any, issues that brings up. I mean, I can't tell you some of the weird shit patients will say will go throughout the course of a research visit,
Right.
how much you want that recorded
Yeah, exactly.
or whatever. And again, it's, I mean, most of it's, nothing completely insane or anything, and nothing illegal. But like, again, I mean, how much of that is, do they want recorded? Is that going to be a problem? That's now part of, I guess, study
Yeah.
record, for better or
Well,
worse.
so I mean, that's like just like we're doing this like just-in-time redaction, right? Like, so redact it as close to the source as possible, as offline as possible. I
Fair.
mean, that's not a crazy idea, right? That you filter out
Yeah. Yeah.
any shit that isn't. And like, these local models are getting so good, you could literally have a box sitting on your desk with like a slightly more powerful GPU, and do that all in
Sure.
like locally. Like, specifically if it's just redaction, that is not like a 22 billion parameter model job. Like, you can use
Yeah.
something way
Yeah.
smaller, open source, and then the rest gets processed by the actual big AI who tries to like interpret what was said. Could be a fun experiment. All right, so I guess this experiment passed, right? I mean, you saw probably on the screen already. I'm a little annoyed that these bounding boxes are just like a little off to the left, but
Well,
again,
you better fire somebody on your team for that.
yeah, it's like the Steve Jobs syndrome is acting up. But other than that, this looks like it worked out. I appreciate the effort into creating this fancy new format. Or like, do you see anything that's wrong here?
I mean, not that I can tell. It occurred to me that, even like
Yeah,
my coordinators all make source a little bit different.
yeah.
So there, there can be some, I mean, sometimes wild variations in what paper source might look like. So I just thought I
But
would.
that's exactly the point, right? That's why we build Catalyst like this. I've been like the biggest, let's just connect everything to Fire and like EMR for like 12 years, and it's just so hard to actually get it done. And so then I was like, okay, fuck this. Let's just accept the reality as it is. Source comes in like 15 different
Yeah.
flavors per study. And let's just make this pipeline intelligent and safe. So yeah, what you did is a very realistic scenario. Actually, most of our active studies have different input formats. So I wasn't too worried when you said you were going to do that, but I was like, still.
I kept it realistic. I didn't get too crazy with it. If I had more time,
So,
I might have messed with it a little bit more. But
oh, well, yeah, I mean, we can do another run. So I think we're 50 minutes in and maybe starting to bore people with our back and forth. What Yeah, I mean, we tried this before, right? You used some of our e-consent. I think you liked it, but then there were like all the kinds of like other practical reasons why that didn't take off. Same question: is this something you would try or use on a study? Either the part that helps with screening or the part that helps with extracting data from whatever source.
I would definitely be interested in like the screening part. And that's something else that I think for us, and you mentioned it, and it's something we haven't really we haven't crossed yet. I mean, I have two people who essentially are texting and calling inbound leads all day. Right?
Yeah,
But how much
yeah,
quicker could we get to? And look, how, I mean, you spend 40 minutes on the phone with somebody to realize like they're not going to qualify for a study. And is there some value in that? Maybe. But at the end of the day, like, we got to get through those patients and to figure out who's going to be, a sort of hot or warm lead versus, someone else we still want to touch base with and talk to
yeah.
for potential future opportunities. But is that, I would be a lot more open to like text chatbot type situations, and we haven't tried that yet. And also, it seems like everybody wants to text versus be on the phone anyway. Um,
Totally,
so
absolutely.
It might make it
Actually,
a
that's
little
a really cool one. You could combine medical records with a couple
Yep.
of texts to confirm
Yep.
some things. Yeah,
Exactly.
it's really nice. Okay, well, maybe we should try that. Sounds like you can make those decisions on the study. As you're doing it already. So let's find a project and see if we can make it work.
I like it. I like it. We got a couple questions, it looks like.
Oh shit! Sorry, I shouldn't swear on the webinars. Wasn't paying attention to that. OpenClaw for sites. I mean, I'm gonna assume that that's half a joke.
I mean, I will say, and I'm admittedly like pretty ignorant. I'm at least vaguely familiar with the concept, but I've not delved in like at all with any of that stuff. But I have had some other site owners like text me some things that they're doing with OpenClaw. Some of it dealing with reconciling payments versus invoices and things like that. So there may be some sort of more generic business use cases there, but it's not something I've really put any. I haven't looked into it. I'm not smart enough to give a educated answer, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk on for an hour about it, but maybe it's a fun webinar. But I would generally say, please do not deploy OpenClaw at your site. Like that's insane. It's just way too hard to keep track of what multiple agents are. Like one agent is hard to monitor. Like 3 quote unquote agents who are communicating with each other who have a certain amount of access is just waiting for a massive problem. So using AI to do some of those tasks in a semi-supervised way, yeah. But OpenClaw specifically is designed to be just like semi-autonomous. Like, oh, I just give you a command and it just goes and figures out and has all this freedom to do shit.
Right.
You shouldn't bring that into a clinical research context. And then Hermes agent, like slightly better. Like, no, I think if we're being serious about GXP and GAM5 and software development lifecycle in clinical trials and just 21 CFR Part 11, you cannot use these catch-all agentic frameworks at site if you're not a total expert, because there has to be a certain amount of traceability. It has to be a certain amount of explainability. And these tools, Hermes or OpenClaw or any of your other favorite agentic frameworks, are just built to be quote unquote intelligent, which means they want to just burn through a shit ton of tokens trying to do things behind the scenes to make your life better. I don't think that's compatible with clinical research. And I also think that the vast majority of users are just not technical enough to really understand how dangerous that is. And I would say like just get Claude Code and have Claude Code work on something that does 80% of the work, and then you check the outputs.
Right.
And then like once you've done that like 10 times, now you can start to put those things together. Yeah, maybe we can do a webinar about that, like agentic for sites. Could be fun.
I'd be curious. Again, that's something I'm not well educated on, but I find it really fascinating for sure.
Yeah. Well, we don't have enough time for that, but yeah, that would be an exciting topic. I have a lot to say about that. And Storm, yeah, on voice, I think you're right. Like I think there's some potential there, but I think it's so untested and so new. It's probably going to require a bit more comfort from all the stakeholders.
I don't necessarily disagree with what you're saying in theory, Storm, but I also know that like at the site level, we get beat up so badly over every little thing in terms of like where the source is. Where's the source for this? The source. So I don't disagree.
Yeah.
And again, theoretically, but if a CRA shows up, when do we ever get to that point? And they're like, "Where's the source?" Yeah, we deleted it. They're gonna be like, "What the fuck? You're in trouble."
Yeah, exactly. That's nobody wants to get their ass kicked by a regulator or a sponsor. It's not fun. Last question, Sylvia Lee. The famous MacBook Mini, the Apple sales jumped up after OpenClaw came out. I mean, this is what I mentioned, right? Like having a box at the site, a box being a device like this, like a MacBook Mini or some other something maybe more powerful. I think it is the future, right? Anything that requires AI but needs to be privacy first, where you don't want to submit anything to one of the massive AI behemoths, this is going to be the answer. And these local models are getting really fucking good. So I would 100% predict a future where most research sites have their own on-site AI capability. The more difficult question is like when. I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 5 years we see a significant increase. But even 5 years from now, it will still be. I would still expect there's more sites without a local AI capability than with. But I do think in 5 years there'll be a significant number of sites that have on-site AI capabilities, and I'm almost 90% certain that Brad, you'll be one of them, because at some point it will become very obvious that it's super nice to have some local processing power to be able to field any of the questions from the sponsor. Like, no, it's all here. It's like it's this physical box. Nothing goes out of this box. And the models are getting so good now. A, it's free, right? Free, as in like the machine is a one-off investment, and then it's just power. And B, it's just super good for privacy. So I'm sure you'll be one of the people that makes that move because you're curious. You know, I'll help you set it up.
All right, perfect.
All right, I think it's time to wrap up. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for your own prep work, Brad. I really appreciate the time you spent on that. And let's do it again soon, man.
I'm sure.
And come to New York, as discussed.
I'll be there. Don't worry.
All right, awesome. I still have your shoes, by the way. I wear them almost every week. It's time for a new pair.
That's it. We need to go shoe shopping. So easy.
All right, deal.